Can Indonesia defend itself from Chinese incursion of Natuna Sea? Indonesia's foreign ministry has filed a formal complaint with China over alleged violations of the Indonesian EEZ in the vicinity of the Natuna Islands, one of the many regional flashpoints in the conflict over sovereignty in the South China Sea. China claims almost all of the South China Sea based on historical Chinese activity in the region, not on international law. The claims' boundaries are defined loosely by Beijing's 9-line chart, and they extend hundreds of miles south of the recognized Chinese EEZ boundary. UNCLOS restricts EEZ claims to 200 nanometers from the nation's own shores. In a statement issued January 1, the Indonesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs noted that China's historically based claims to fishing rights inside of other nations' EEZs are not supported by UNCLOS, and that these claims have already been rejected by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. The ministry also took the unusual step of rejecting China's use of the neutral term "the relevant waters" to refer to Indonesia's EEZ. The phrase follows a format often used by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs when discussing disputes: the relevant area, the relevant individual, the relevant party, etc. Indonesia rejects the term "the relevant waters" claimed by China because this term is unknown and is incompatible with UNCLOS 1982, the ministry wrote. Further, Indonesia rejected the notion that it has anything to discuss with China about its boundaries. Based on UNCLOS 1982, Indonesia does not have overlapping claims with the PRC, so that it is not relevant to have any dialogue on maritime boundary delimitation, the ministry declared. The statement follows a series of unauthorized incursions by Chinese fishing boats and China Coast Guard escort vessels into Indonesian waters. More than 50 Chinese fishing vessels and government ships entered the Indonesian EEZ on December 24, according to Indonesia's Maritime Security Agency. An interagency meeting at the Foreign Ministry confirmed that there were violations in the Indonesian EEZ, including IUU fishing activities and violations of sovereignty by China's Coast Guard in Natuna waters, the ministry wrote Monday. In response, the ministry summoned China's ambassador to Jakarta, Xiao Jian, to protest the incursions and to communicate that Indonesia will not recognize the Chinese 9-line claim. According to Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang, the presence of China Coast Guard vessels is normal and expected in the area. China has historical rights in the South China Sea. Chinese fishermen have long been engaging in fishery activities in relevant waters near the Chinese-claimed Spratly Islands, which has all along been legal and legitimate. The China Coast Guard were performing their duty by carrying out routine patrol to maintain maritime order and protect our people's legitimate rights and interests in the relevant waters, Shuang said at a press conference Tuesday. The nearest of the Spratly Islands is located about 370 nanometers to the northeast of the Natuna Islands. The incursions were observed on commercial ACE tracking platforms, and video of the encounters between Indonesian forces and the China Coast Guard has been released to Indonesian television outlets, below. The increase in Chinese incursions followed shortly after the departure of Indonesia's previous fisheries minister, Susi Pujiastuti, who raised her ministry's profile by confiscating and destroying hundreds of unlicensed foreign fishing vessels. Pujiastuti was not selected to retain her post in the new administration of Indonesian President Joko Widodo, who won re-election in early 2019. Historically, disputed South China Sea belongs to Indonesia's Sriwijaya and Majapahit Kingdom. Sriwijaya control was thus complete over the two main gateways to maritime trade lanes into Nusantara, which are Malacca Straits in the north and Sunda Straits in the south. Never being complacent, from Kedah Sriwijayan ground forces pushed eastward to conquer Patani on the eastern coast of Malay Peninsula, opening access to maritime traffics in the Gulf of Siam and South China Sea. The Majapahit Empire was founded in 1293 in the South China Sea, over a large area that now forms Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, East Timor, and the Philippines. Just before its emergence, a kingdom known as Singasari was the strongest in the area. In 1290, Kublai Khan, successor of Genghis Khan, sent an envoy to the leader of Singasari, asking that they put themselves under his protection and pay them tribute. Instead of complying with their request, the ruler refused, branded the Khan's messenger like a thief, cut his ears and sent him back to Kublai Khan. According to the Kota Kapur inscription discovered on Bangka Island, the empire conquered most of southern Sumatra and the neighboring island of Bangka, as far as Lampung. Also, according to the inscriptions, Dapunta Hyang Sri Jayanasa launched a military campaign against Java in the late 7th century, a period which coincided with the decline of Tarumanagara in West Java and the Kalinga Kingdom in central Java. The Sriwijaya Empire thus grew to control the trade on the Strait of Malacca, the Sunda Strait, the South China Sea, the Java Sea, and the Karimata Strait. Thalassocracy Sriwijaya. Sriwijaya as well as Majapahit was a thalassocracy, that is, rule over the sea. Popular views, both lay people and experts simply hold that both were imperiums just like Roman Empire. However, unlike Romans who conquered lands, Sriwijaya and Majapahit tended to let alone terrestrial polities as they were. Just like their ancestors the southern people, Sriwijaya and Majapahit were more interested in the seas, which are the main feature of Nusantara landscape. For hundreds of years both of them stood vigil to ensure that Nusantara seas are always free and open to anyone who wished to communicate and trade. A thalassocracy is different from an imperium in terms of domination. Both Sriwijaya and Majapahit never enforced their language, for example, to other nations and ethnic groups. As a matter of fact, from ancient times Malay language, which is the direct descendant of Proto-Austronesian language, survives as a language of trade between nations, particularly those who inhabit coastal areas. This is evident from name of places in Nusantara that stay the same as they were, even during the heights of those two empires. Romans, on the other hand, were busy replacing name of places all over Europe into their Latin. It was told in history that in 683, Jayanasa led an army comprising of approximately 300 sailors and 1,000 infantries to conquer Palembang and Jambi. With the fall of those two cities, which situated on the banks of great rivers Musi and Batanghari, whose estuaries are in Karimata Straits, a 700 years history of glory was started, that is, the history of Sriwijaya Empire. Jayanasa, who took the regnal name of Dapunta Hyang Sri, Maharaja, Jayanasa, was not choosing the targets for his military expeditions at random. The two cities in ancient times were very busy international trade hubs, due to their locations in the global main trade nexus that stretches from Malacca Straits in the north, proceeds southbound through Karimata Straits, turns eastward to Java Sea and onto the Spices Islands in the eastern Nusantara, and back. Jambi, particularly, which at that time was under the rule of ancient Malay Kingdom, was a trade center internationally renowned for its riches, very busy and very prestigious. The fall of Jambi instantly increased Sriwijaya's prestige that started as a relatively unknown small kingdom in hinterland. With Palembang and Jambi ports secured, Sriwijaya continued to expand its influence. In order to strengthen his grip on southern Sumatra, one of the most important military campaign launched by Sri Jayanasa was against Kota Kapur, also an ancient port city, in Bangka Island. From there, his armada proceeded southward until all southern Lampung coasts bowed to his rule. In early 700s, Sriwijaya influence had even reached Java by conquering important port cities along Javan western and northern coasts, which previously were under the rules of Tarumanagara and Kalinga kingdoms. The fall of both sides of Sunda Straits under Jayanasa's rule, as well as Java Sea and its coastal areas, had automatically made Sriwijaya the effective ruler of one of the two entrances to the most important international trade lanes at that time. Historical accounts also show that under Jayanasa leadership Sriwijaya's influence had reached Kalimantan western and southern coasts. Sriwijaya, therefore, had effectively controlled the southern gateway to the source of one of the most lucrative commodities at that time, the spices that can only be found in an archipelago in the eastern Nusantara. Meanwhile, Dharmasita, Jayanasa's successor, turned his attention northward. After consolidating his grip on both sides of Karimata Straits, he launched his military campaigns to Malacca Straits, as the northern gateway to Nusantara's inner water. Dermasitu at almost the same time conquered Kedah in Malay Peninsula west coast and Lopburi in northern Sumatra east coast, both were the biggest trade ports in Malacca Straits at that time. The conquest of Kedah and Lopburi on both sides of Malacca Straits allowed Sriwijaya to effectively control the northern gateway. Sriwijaya control was thus complete over the two main gateways to maritime trade lanes into Nusantara, which are Malacca Straits in the north and Sunda Straits in the south. Never being complacent, from Kedah Sriwijayan ground forces pushed eastward to conquer Patani on the eastern coast of Malay Peninsula, opening access to maritime traffics in the Gulf of Siam and South China Sea. Dermasitu's successors, both through diplomacy as well as seaborne military campaigns, also continued to extend Sriwijaya's influence until reaching eastern and southern coasts of Indochina even and its hinterlands altogether. At its apex in 12th century, Sriwijaya's circle of influence, Mandala, encompassed all waters around the coastal areas of Sumatra, Java, Malayan Peninsula, eastern Indochina, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Maluku Islands, and southern islands of the Philippines, particularly Sulu and Visayas archipelagos, a name that is clearly related to the name Sriwijaya. With control over maritime trade in western Indonesian Ocean, since 9th century many Nusantara inhabitants traveled to Madagascar off African east coast and stayed there. Until today, the language of native Madagascars shows many resemblances with Dayak language in East Kalimantan. Sriwijaya, however, was not the oldest known kingdom in Nusantara that left written proofs. Written proofs, nonetheless, never are that important. It was the observance of the founders of Sriwijaya to the heritage of their predecessors, the Souther people, who embraced Nusantara oceans, not its land, as their true homeland. In addition, Sriwijaya, not only relying on their navy, also unified the trading cities under their influence by means of a unifying language, that is, Ancient Malay, which was the direct successor of the ancient Austronesian language and the origin of Bahasa Indonesia. Indonesia boosts patrols near Natuna Islands, as row with China escalates. Indonesia is boosting patrols in its maritime territory in the South China Sea after incursions by Chinese Coast Guard and fishing boats in recent days. The head of Indonesia's Maritime Security Agency, Bakamla, said the country would defend its waters off the Natuna Islands, an archipelago at the southern reaches of the contested sea, after more than 60 Chinese ships trespassed in its exclusive economic zone, EEZ, in late December. "We will be present there and we will stake our claim," Vice Admiral Ahmad Taufiqo Araman, the chief of Bakamla, told reporters after meeting with cabinet ministers in Jakarta on Friday. The Indonesian National Armed Forces, TNI, will also exert their strength, Ahmad said. He did not indicate how many additional personnel or ships would be deployed, saying those details were confidential. TNI said it had deployed 3 ships, 1 maritime reconnaissance aircraft and an Indonesian Air Force plane to patrol Natuna waters. Another ship was on its way to the region from Jakarta, the military said in a statement. After Jakarta lodged a diplomatic protest over the December incursion, Beijing's foreign ministry defended the presence of Chinese boats around the Indonesian islands, saying that China has rights and interests over the relevant waters. Chinese boats including 3 Coast Guard vessels were again spotted in Natuna waters on Friday, according to Indonesian media outlet Tempo. "When we conduct air patrol this morning, we find 30 boats there. I have deployed more security personnel," it quoted the Bakamla chief as saying. Gas fields near the islands are believed to hold up to 226 trillion cubic feet of gas, according to data from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. Following a series of encounters with Chinese ships in Indonesian waters in 2016, including one in which the Indonesian Navy fired warning shots at Chinese-flagged vessels, Indonesia further irritated Beijing by renaming the area the North Natuna Sea. Jakarta then launched an ambitious 5-point plan for developing the Natunas that involved military facilities, fisheries, tourism, oil and gas, and preserving the environment. "It is our right to develop the Natuna waters," Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi told reporters on Friday. "We would also like to emphasize again that there have been violations by Chinese vessels in Indonesia's EEZ. Overlapping claims. Indonesia has traditionally not been among countries in the region engaged in territorial disputes over the South China Sea, a strategic waterway through which about $5 trillion in trade passes annually. China, through its so-called Nine-Line, claims almost all of the sea, while Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan have their own overlapping claims to portions of those waters. In a 2016 ruling on a case brought by the Philippines, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague said there was no legal basis for Beijing's maritime claims. But China rejected the ruling and launched a building spree in territories it has taken over in the sea. China's Nine-Line overlaps with Indonesia's EEZ in waters off the Natuna. U.S.-based experts on the South China Sea told Benar News. Evan Laxmana, a senior researcher at the Jakarta-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, said the Natuna waters had been one of Indonesia's potential flashpoints since the 1990s because of their location in the South China Sea. If the military anticipated some form of conflict spillover, from regional countries fighting with each other, the Natunas are among the likeliest or closest scenarios, Evan told Benar News. In addition to the problems in the South China Sea, I think this maritime crisis over fisheries potential has given an additional public momentum for the TNI to put in place pre-existing policies and plans to beef up military security in the area, he said. A future Pearl Harbor. In 2018, Indonesia began building a military base on Natuna Besar, the Regency's main island, which will reportedly house several branches of the armed forces when completed, as well submarines, warships, and fighter jets. Riamizard Riyakudu, the defense minister during President Joko Widodo's first term, envisioned the base as a future Pearl Harbor. The Natuna Integrated TNI unit is part of our strategic plans to develop our strength to provide deterrence against threats, especially at the borders, Military Commander Air Chief Marshal Hadi T. Yajanto said during the facility's launch in 2018. Military officials did not grant Benar News access to the site during a visit to the Regency in December, and TNI officials in Jakarta declined to respond to questions for this report. Civilians in Natuna privately expressed doubts that tourism could flourish in a place with such a heavy military presence. But the government has established a network of parks in the island chain, and plans to nominate Natuna as a UNESCO Global Geopark due to its biodiversity and unique geological features. What triggered the central government to beef up the military is the South China Sea issue, Rodial Huda, a former fishing boat captain and entrepreneur in Rana, told Benar News. The plan to strengthen the local economy by promoting tourism and fisheries could boost the country's prestige, according to Rodial. National pride does not only come from fighting strength, but also economic strength. If the economy is strong, so is our self-esteem. If the economy is weak, we are weak too, he said. Hardian Saya, the head of tourism and culture in the islands, said he was optimistic that the central government's plan to make Natuna a tourism hub could increase regional revenue. The government is building a seaport in Sino Bay off one of the Natuna islets that will allow tourists from Singapore and Malaysia to come by boat. Currently, tourism contributes Rp 2.7 billion, $193,800, to the local economy, and we hope it will increase tenfold or maybe more, Hardian Saya told Benar News. Jakarta has also poured money into developing Natuna's fishing industry in the past 5 years. In October, the government launched the Natuna Integrated Marine and Fisheries Center, which had been in development for 3 years and cost 221.7 billion rupiah, $15.9 million. Didi Damhudi, head of the Fisheries Empowerment Division at the Natuna Regency Maritime and Fisheries Office, said programs and policies introduced by Jakarta had contributed to bigger catches. During the last 4 years, the impact has been significant. There have been plenty of fish. Coral reefs have been rehabilitated, Didi told Benar News. Natuna is unique among Indonesian territories because it borders so many countries, including Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, and Malaysia. Fishing boats from countries closer than China commonly trespass in the area, local fishermen say. The government policy of seizing and sinking foreign fishing boats was popular among Indonesians but exposed the government to criticism from affected countries. That policy may change under Edi Prabowo, Indonesia's new Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. New Minister Edi seems to be moving towards overturning his predecessor's policies, so it seems possible that blowing up ships may no longer be the priority for the new ministry. But we have to wait and see, said Evan of the CSIS in Jakarta. Edi has said that the scuttling of confiscated boats was a good policy, but it was not enough. What to do after that? We have to develop the industry. How is our fisheries industry faring? What about our fishermen's yield? These are things we have to improve, the minister said recently. Edi said his ministry was considering donating impounded boats to local fishermen with court approval instead of destroying them. Meanwhile in Rana, it is often fishermen who inform the Navy about the presence of foreign boats. In this storm season, they enter our territory saying they need to take cover. But they don't go to port. They keep taking fish. Just last year, we saw hundreds of them. The ships are huge, dozens of tons. Some are more than 100 tons, Rusli, a local fisherman, told Benar News in December. Confrontations even occur, with boat rammings on the open sea. We are okay as long as the Navy or fisheries patrols keep going out. If someone escorts us,